Hi everyone and welcome to my BFA Quick Start guide series, where I explain you all of the things you need to know in a quick and easy to understand video. In this one we are going to talk about all of the changes made to the Arcane Mage going into BFA. As always, the video will be separated into 3 different segments: changes made to base on abilities, spells and mechanics, followed by me showing you the different talent builds, and the third segment will be about the rotation. At the end of the video there will be some bonus content for the people who still want to get the most out of their Arcane Mage during the pre-patch. But don't worry, this guide should still be valid and up to date once you have reached level 120. Arcane is, let's say, the only spec out of the 3 that actually saw a number of rework and changes. I'm not saying that they're good, all I'm saying is that the Arcane Mage doesn't play the same as in patch 7.3.5. Arcane has always been the less played spec out of the 3, except maybe during Wrath, where Arcane was really overpowered. In BFA, the Arcane Mage still has its known burn and conserve phase playstyle, which did become less punishing. However, like with almost all of the classes, Arcane is also affected by the GCD changes, so yes, your Arcane Mage does feel a little bit slower. Okay, let's start with the first part of the video. Arcane Power is, as you can already guess, on the global cooldown. Charge Up is also on the global cooldown, which explains right away why the gameplay feels slower. Arcane Missiles has been reworked and can be cast without needing a proc, and its damage is no longer based on your number of arcane charges. Like Arcane Missiles, your Arcane Explosions also no longer do more damage based on your arcane charges. Arcane Blast goes faster depending on how many arcane charges you have. Clear Casting is basically the new proc-based system for Arcane Missiles. It makes your Arcane Explosion and Missiles free, and on top of that, your Arcane Missiles channel 20% faster. Some new talents. Rule of Trees is sadly enough not a copy from our old artifact trade, but it does replace Words of Power as a talent. When you gain your 3rd arcane charge, the cost of your next Arcane Blast or Arcane Missiles is reduced by 100%. Using Charge Up also activates this talent. Slipstream has been altered, as Slipstream will only make our clear casted missiles castable while moving. Reverberate is a new talent that replaces Erosion. God damn it, I really love the Erosion. So when Arcane Explosions hit at least 3 targets, it has a 40% chance to generate an extra arcane charge. Touch of the Magi is also new and replaces Unstable Magic. Arcane Blast has a 10% chance to apply Touch of the Magi, accumulating 15% of the damage you deal to the target for 8 seconds and then exploding for that amount of arcane damage to the target and all nearby targets. Time Anomaly is also a new talent and replaces Temporal Flux. At any moment you have a chance to gain Arcane Power for 8 seconds, gain Evocation for 1 second, and gain 4 arcane charges. Pretty interesting talent if you ask me. Like Frost and Fire, Arcane Intellect and Remove Cursed has also been added back to our toolkit. As always, let's take a look at the different talent builds. First up is our leveling and questing build. Level 15, pick up whichever one you like, as all of the 3 choices are pretty close to each other in terms of damage. Arcane Familiar pulls slightly ahead, but Rules of 3 might be more interesting for leveling. Next row you can choose between Shimmer or Slipstream. Level 45 take Incanter's Flow. Level 60 Resonance. 75 row Chrono Shift. Level 90 row Reverberate or Nether Tempest, both are good choices. And last but not least, the 100 row you take Overpower. This build will result in the most smoothest and fastest gameplay. Next is our Mythic plus Dungeon build for AoE damage. Arcane Familiar, Shimmer or Slipstream, whichever one you like the most. At the end of the day, Incanter's Flow will pull slightly ahead, but Rune of Power is stronger when you need heavy burst or maybe more boss damage. Level 60 Resonance, Chrono Shift, Reverberate or Nether Tempest, both are fine. And for level 100 we take Arcane Orb. Okay, let's take a look at our single target build. Again, Arcane Familiar, Shimmer or Slipstream, choice is up to you. Rune of Power will be better in most cases, but you can still play with Incanter's Flow if Rune of Power is too hard for you. Level 60 Charged Up. Next we take Chrono Shift, Touch of the Magi, and last but not least, Overpowered. Let's start with the basic rotation first, and we will work our way up from there. So like I said in the beginning of the video, Arcane has 2 different phases, a burn phase and a conserve phase. In the burn phase, we burn all of our mana, and in the conserve phase, we conserve all of our mana. In short, we are alternating between our burn phases and conserve phases, which is dictated by whether or not evocation is on cooldown. Let's start with the burn phase. Okay, you can enter the burn phase when the following statement is true. You have 4 arcane charges. Arcane power is ready. You have at least 1 charge of Rune of Power. Of course, when you use Incanter's Flow, you can let this one fly. And you have at least 50% mana. A few tips and tricks that will help you out when executing the different upcoming rotations. Put Arcane Power and Presence of Mind together in one macro, along with any unused trinkets. Make sure to never ever dump your arcane charges before using Evocation. You always want to use Evocation at 4 arcane charges. And that's it. So okay, with this in mind, your basic rotation looks like this. You precast an Arcane Blast. You keep using Arcane Blast until you reach 4 stacks, or Arcane Explosion when you're close enough. When you have 4 stacks, the burn phase begins. Use another Tempest at 4 arcane charges. Cast Arcane Power, cast Presence of Mind. Arcane Barrage when there are more than 3 targets. Cast Arcane Explosions once there are more than 3 targets. Use Arcane Missiles when you get a clear casting proc. Use those instant Arcane Blasts from your Presence of Mind when you have 4 arcane charges. When there are less than 3 targets, keep using Arcane Blast. If not, you use Arcane Explosions until you run out of mana. Of course, should you get any clear casting procs, use them. And when you're out of mana, use Evocation at 4 arcane charges. And then the burn phase ends. Next we have the conserve phase, where the goal is to conserve mana, so we can go into the burn phase once Arcane Power is ready and Evocation has, let's say, 20 seconds left on its cooldown. During the conserve phase, we still want to do damage and try to use as much Arcane Blast while at 4 arcane charges, and at the same time we keep an eye out to our mana. I would suggest to keep your mana around 50%. So here's the conserve phase. Use another Tempest at 4 arcane charges. Use Arcane Blast or Arcane Explosions when there are more than 3 targets. Use Arcane Missiles when you get a clear casting proc. When your mana drops too low, use Arcane Barrage to dump your arcane charges. And then use either Arcane Blasts or Arcane Explosions to get back to 4 arcane charges. Continue this rotation until Arcane Power is ready and you can start with burning your mana again. Be sure to always use and refresh another Tempest at 4 arcane charges. And with the Resonance talent, you can use Barrage more often. Okay, with the burn and conserve phase in mind, let's get into the fun part, our AoE rotation. Of course, when you play with Resonance, your Arcane Barrage will do a lot more damage, so in AoE situations, we not only want to use it as a charge dumping mechanic, but also as a spell that has good damage output. You can use Arcane Blasts when there are less than 3 targets. If not, you use Arcane Explosions to reach 4 arcane charges. You can also use Arcane Orb to get 4 charges, if placed well. Use another Tempest on 4 stacks, and then the burn phase begins. You use your Arcane Power, Presence of Mind, use Arcane Barrage, use Arcane Explosions. At the same time, you want to cast any Arcane Missiles from your clear casting procs. Use those instant Arcane Blasts from your Presence of Mind to nuke down important targets. Use Arcane Barrage when there are a lot of targets, and again keep casting Arcane Explosions. Use any procs that you might get, and use Evocation when you're out of mana. As you can already notice, Arcane is very situational. When there is, for example, a very big AoE pack, then it might be better to just use Arcane Power and go in with only Arcane Explosions and finish it off with a Barrage at 4 arcane charges. When you play with Arcane Orb, you can go back to back with, for example, already having 4 arcane charges. Use a Barrage to dump your stacks. Place your Orb well and gain again 4 charges to dump them again with an Arcane Barrage. After some playtime, you will notice when it's beneficial to use Barrage or to keep your arcane charges for the next pack. It's, like I said, very situational. Last but not least, nuking down targets is what makes the Arcane Mage great. So make sure you use those clear casting Arcane Missiles and instant Presence of Mind Arcane Blasts on high priority targets. Then during the AoE conserve phase, we use another Tempest at 4 arcane charges. You can use Arcane Orb when you don't have 4 arcane charges. Use Arcane Explosion, cast Arcane Missiles when you get a clear casting proc, and of course use your Barrage to dump your arcane charges while always keeping an eye on your mana. Right, last but not least, our single target rotation. Okay, now you can start by pre-casting an Arcane Blast, use Charged Up, then you want to use Rune of Power, Arcane Power and Presence of Mind, cast your 2 instant Arcane Blasts from your Presence of Mind. When you get a clear casting proc, you use them. When Arcane Power ends, you use your second Rune of Power. Keep casting Arcane Blast until you run out of mana. Of course, as always, use any clear casting procs when they occur. Evocation at 0 mana, and then the burn phase has ended. In the conserve phase, the goal is to keep ourselves around 50% mana. You can use 1 charge of Rune of Power during this phase, and the rotation is the following. So after your evocation has ended, keep using Arcane Blasts. When Rune of Power is about to come off cooldown, be sure that you have 4 Arcane charges. If not, you can use Charge Up. Cast Rune of Power and keep casting those Arcane Blasts. Use, of course, any clear casting stacks that you might get with Arcane Missiles. Keep casting Arcane Blast and use a Barrage at the end of your Rune of Power. Then you wait for Arcane Power and Evocation to almost come off cooldown, and then the burn phase begins again. And that's everything rotation-wise for Battle for Azeroth. Now over to the bonus content for the people who are still interested in doing the most amount of damage in the pre-patch. Like most classes, picking up the tier 21 Force set is your best option, but the Force set does alter our rotation a little bit. And I will get to that in a second. But first, let's talk about the best in slot legendaries. Mystic Kilt in combination with Mantle of the First Kirin or Mystic Kilt with Shard of the Exodar. No more Soul of the Archmage, because it's no longer a great legendary, because it now gives us that level 15 talent amplification, which is mediocre at best. Now rotation wise, because of the tier 21 Force set bonus, we want to always dump our 4 arcane charges before we get into our burn phase or mini burn phase. This means that our opener is a pre-casted Arcane Blast, casting another 3 Arcane Blasts to reach 4 stacks, dump them with Arcane Barrage, and use Charged Up to get back at 4 stacks. Use Rune of Power, use your Arcane Power macro, and start using your Arcane Blast until you get clear casting procs. Keep going, and that's basically everything you have to do. The only thing that changes is our opener and how we initiate our burn phase. And that is all for this one, ladies and gentlemen. Please do be aware that this is still kind of a basic guide, just for the people that want to catch up with their class in a quick and easy manner. Like the video if you liked it, put any comments in the comment section down below, and of course, don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you want to see more WoW videos. Thank you so much for watching, guys, and I'll see you next time.